And yun, we're live again for another episode of HR Shouts and Whispers, episode number 61. And syempre, ang topic natin for tonight is employer and personal branding. Syempre, my name is Ken Somera, and our main host for tonight, George Ramos. Hi, George.
Hey, good evening, Ken. Long
Yeah,
time no
man.
see.
Yeah, man. Good.
I'm George Ramos. Hi to everyone who's watching. Welcome to HR Shouts and Whispers. This is a very good topic that we're going to be discussing tonight. Uh, we have we're very fortunate to have a guest right now, who's going to walk us through and provide us some insight on this thing or this concept that they call employee branding. Why is it important? No, and not just employee branding, but also the employer branding side. So, as all the HR folks who are watching us would know, there's this thing called an employee value proposition, and maybe tonight our guest can enlighten us on what it exactly is. And of course, Ken is with us tonight also. He is part of HR Shouts and Whispers, who can also provide us on the perspective of how you can actually accentuate your employee brand as an employee. Okay, so I won't hold this any further. I'm missing somebody though because Cristina should be here, and I think she just ran into something. And I hope she can still be here with us. But anyway, I won't hold this any further. Um, I'd like to introduce our guest, and this guy I tell you is um, perhaps one of the go-to people, shall we say, when it comes to employee and employer branding, because he's made an advocacy out of it. He's with an organizational. He's done organizational development. He's been in the HR field for quite a long time and has developed deep expertise in that respect. So I'd like to present to you tonight, guys, Mr. Sam Neo from Stories of Asia. Hi, Sam.
Hi everyone. Hi George. Hi Ken. Hi everyone. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah,
Hey,
welcome,
great,
man. Yeah.
great. Okay, so guys, it's gonna be all three boys who's going to talk tonight. Oh, so
A very interesting
with that,
topic. Yeah.
you know what it's gonna be. It's gonna be anything goes. Three boys gonna be talking about employer and employee branding. So it's going to be an exciting discussion. Um, I will be the moderator. Okay, so I will be asking questions to both of you, but
Yeah.
I'll also probably provide some of my insights along the way. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Sure.
that's how we're gonna be going tonight. All right.
All right.
So let's probably start with our guest, Ken. I'm very curious, Sam. Sam is from Stories of Asia.
Uh-huh.
I really want to find out what is Stories of Asia. What do you guys do? And I've heard that you're actually opening a chapter here in the Philippines, and I'm really curious what it is all about, and how it adds value to the HR community.
So Stories of Asia is actually in the simplest form is a platform. It's an engagement platform. Where people come using storytelling as a medium to find their own voice. Maybe I can share a little bit about how Stories of Asia started. I mean, that's an interesting story actually. So I've been sharing this quite a fair bit. So what happened was about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was actually back then I had my first business. It's a consulting business. It was doing pretty okay. And I started thinking like, what's next? So I started meditating to get some inspiration. Right? So after the first day, what happened was there wasn't much inspiration. It just felt good. Second day, it felt like something was getting there. The idea was coming there, but nothing really hit yet. And on the third day, right, after meditating, what happened was I realized I had this aha moment that, hey, what I really needed was to build a community, a platform where it enables people within Asia itself to have a voice. Why is this so important to me? Is because I feel that in the Asian community itself, what happens is that we do a lot of great stuff, HR itself, business itself. But too often, because of value system, what happens is we don't shout out. There's no shouts, there's no whispers even, to some extent, because we are just it's not in our value system to tell people what we do. It feels like showing off as compared to our Western counterparts where it's more natural to showcase what they do and it's very, very second nature in that sense. Hence, I felt that there's so many gems that are uncovered within the Asian market. And hence, I wanted a platform, Stories of Asia, to make that happen with a collective voice. So people from different walks of life, they can come, show different ways of storytelling, whether it's like a webinar like this, a live chat, it can be an article, it can be a recorded video, it can be an event, whatever it is, right? In different ways to find their own voice in the most effective manner to tell their story, and with their story, change life, inspire journeys, and really have that connection basically. So hence Stories of Asia was born to really create a platform to give the Asian community a voice. So that's how we started. And for the Philippines chapter itself, what happened was actually we started in Singapore about a year and a half ago. And this year, we just kind of launched it in 6 new markets outside of Singapore. Philippines is one. We just launched it about, I think, 3 weeks ago. Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Hong Kong. So we are really glad that not SOA is really SOA and not just Stories of Singapore, SOS, which is not the best thing,
Stories
right?
of
So
Asia.
yeah. So that's how we started and where we are at this moment.
Interesting. Before my next question, Sam, let's welcome Christina. Hi, Christina.
Hi,
Welcome,
Christina.
Christina.
Welcome
Yes,
back.
hi everyone.
Good
Yeah.
news.
Okay, so this is one of the things that happens. Okay, just I think our internet has an uncanny ability to time its its quirks. Okay, so anyway, so George and Sam. Okay, so we were talking about Stories of Asia. I think that it's something similar with the way that Asia Shouts and Whispers was conceptualize. We
Mm,
were like looking for everyone to have a voice. And
mm,
it just happened that during the pandemic, everyone was looking at social media. And Ken and I started this last year. And then when the pandemic hit, okay, so we became more active. And okay, so can you tell us a little bit more? Are you targeting the millennials for Stories of Asia, or it's just across all ages?
So Stories of Asia for us, we target across the board. The reason
Mm,
why I created it is because I didn't want it to just be stories of senior management or specific groups. I feel that in the market, very often, in particular the Asian market itself, stories that we hear very often come from the senior management group, right? The CEOs, the CMOs, whatever it is. But the 80% of the population, the regular working folks, tend to not have a platform to tell their stories, to share, and to brand themselves in turn, in that sense, I feel. So hence Stories of Asia, I wanted it intentionally to be inclusive platform for everyone, regardless of where you come from, your social status, which country, whatever it is. Everyone has a role to play, has a platform of SOA itself to tell their stories in their own way, basically. So that's really what we're trying to do. And in terms of the types of stories we tell, right, in terms of who we attract, 3 main pillars that we have. One is the workplace stories, which falls nicely into HR, of course, like what you guys are doing, Shouts and Whispers. We have the entrepreneurship side, which is more for startups, more for investors, even for people who are career transiting from corporate to the entrepreneurship space itself. Finally, we also have this community angle where we focus on the underprivileged everyday people and really about social issues to some extent. So hence, if you look at it all coming together in 3 pillars, what we're trying to do is to really help individuals and organizations have a voice and in turn have this professional and personal development aspect of it. So that's really, in short, hopefully short enough, what SOA is trying to achieve, at least for now. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the reason why George is here because George, okay, so he was from HR, okay,
Mm.
org dev, okay, and then he went into marketing, okay. So
Ah.
with the pandemic and everything, okay. So how can you two describe, okay, the challenges of entrepreneurs nowadays? So are can they be quickly recover or how is it? uh, I'll ask first, George. Okay, so from your point of view, okay, in terms of marketing, because you're now actively with marketing, okay, so how can people pick up from from the struggle and
Thank you, Christina, for asking me. I was supposed to be the moderator, but thank you for being the
Mhm.
moderator. So I'll answer the question. I'll answer the question. Well, again, I think this thing has been, when let's just call it this. Let's call it the term pivot, meaning
Mhm.
pivot, meaning being able to go into digital transactions, being able to go to digital lead generation, being able to go to social media. I mean, this thing maximizing the platform itself. I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of uh, improvement areas from the time that this happened before the pandemic, when people was actually telling everyone that, hey, we need to go digital, we need to do this, we need to do that. Now, when this happened, when this pandemic happened, as much as we as much as the ones who have been there, who have into traditional businesses or even startups who aren't into the digital space, they realized that they had to act really fast. They had to adapt really fast, and I think um, the struggle there for me that I'm seeing, because I've spoken to a lot of industry colleagues, there are also friends, who I know of. One of the struggles really is the acceptance, I guess, that they should be doing this, and also the acceptance that some of the things that they've been doing in the past in terms of business needs to go. So specifically, what are these things? So if your business is not agile enough to address what the customer needs right now, regardless of what type of business you're into, and these needs are very much latent. You can see it, you can see it out there. Anything that has, again, to go with survival, entertainment, and safety, and even the way we do things quicker and faster. I think those are the businesses that are good right now. And if you can't adjust to that, then there has to be some shifts that needs to be done.
How
And that's
about
what I'm seeing.
yes, so George, thank you. Okay, so because like the reason I asked, okay, so my husband and I, we have had to pivot also. Okay, so we actually had to transform our business. Okay, unfortunately, we had to, also contract, meaning let go of some people, but it was like, everything was like professional done. Okay, or compliant. Okay, so how about Sam? Okay, so you are a dadpreneur,
Yeah.
so yes. So how is it? Okay. So how would you describe the business climate in Singapore?
I would say it's similar. I mean, it's similar to the rest of Asia at least, right? Where when the pandemic hit, for us was sometime in February, I recall, right? Because my baby was born in Feb actually, so that's how I recall so clearly. Just a simple story to illustrate my point. Right? So when February hit and baby was born, suddenly, because of the COVID itself, I couldn't travel. Some of my clients or major clients were in the travel industry in particular, which was badly hit, obviously, right? Income was almost down to zero from a very 5-digit figure all the way to zero basically within a couple of months. And for the next few months, it was really that bad, right? So obviously it wasn't the nicest moment. I have a newborn and suddenly business is like, wow, it kind of crashed, suddenly, right? So I think it's initially, obviously, I was just paying attention to my kid, just taking like my paternity leave, just enjoying the moment. But then when, reality sinks in, instead of worrying, I started thinking of, so this shows me that, hey, my business isn't as robust,
Mm,
not as robust as I thought, right? Even though the income was really high in 2019, was a good year, but suddenly because of just COVID, of course, no one expected it. But if my income can just crash to zero for like 1 to 2 months, it tells me something about business model, basically, right? I'm too
mm,
relying on a specific area. Hence, to me, it actually presented an opportunity to reflect. Because of the fact that we are all caught up at home, we can't do much, right? Besides taking care of my baby, obviously. It gave me a lot of time to rethink, to reinvent myself. And that's where I started thinking, so how can I make my business more robust? How can I not be so complacent moving forward because of the situation that woke me up a little bit? And how can I really focus more on the digital aspect? Because moving forward, right, like we have seen, it's so easy now to do a business with countries outside of your own home country, basically. So in the past, you got to fly there, you have to build relationship, but now it's
mhm,
so normal to just build relationship like this. For instance, just calling from Singapore to Philippines in that sense, right? So because of this pandemic, I think it reshaped my thinking, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs as well, at least for those who are able to pivot fast enough, to rethink a business model, to change and tap on the current situation where, the cost is so low to really market your stuff, to connect people outside of your country, and to really get your brand out beyond your home country itself. So I think, in fact, even though it might seem like a crisis, but if you're able to shift your mindset to see the opportunity within, that's where I think the entrepreneurs can actually thrive. And because of that, actually, just within about 3 to 4 months itself, our business started picking up, and now it's doing pretty okay, actually, I must say, because of that.
So with pivoting, okay, or transformation, okay, comes rebranding, and this is a strange animal to most HRs. Okay,
Yeah.
so for HRs who are in companies that are rebranding, how can they support this corporate agenda?
I think for HR, when it comes to employer branding, one of the common misperception is that employer branding equals to social media marketing. That's the typical misconception where, okay, if I want to do employer branding, I engage a digital marketing firm, I put up a lot of posts online, I get the clicks, I get the views. That's employer branding to most people at this moment, I would say. But what is employer branding? So social media is definitely one part of it. I'm not going to deny that. It's increasingly important because all of us are locked in at home and we're looking at a global talent pool, increasingly so for today's day and age itself. But what's important is that HR people need to first recognize, right, that employer branding actually starts from within. Let me explain a little bit more. So when it comes to employer branding, I always say it's an inside out branding where first and foremost, let's look at inside, right? What are our strengths? What are our gaps first? Because when we talk about, I think just now George mentioned about employee value proposition, right? It's basically what promise can you give to employees when they decide to sign up or join your company. So first and foremost, it's important to understand from their point of view, not from management, but their point of view, what actually resonates with them, right? So for example, you can say that, oh, we give the best benefits, we have the nicest office. But if you ask employee, right, they may say that to me the office is fine, but it doesn't make me tick. I didn't join for the office space, but what I joined was really because I love the culture that I have a lot of autonomy. I have that flexible working hours. I get to meet people who are like-minded, who are like, have that championship mindset, for example, right? So we need to first understand from their point of view, in their shoes, what do employees resonate with internally first, and use that, right, as the proposition to say, okay, how can we align them with what the management and HR wants to present to the external to attract the right candidates, basically. And that's where employer branding actually starts. It starts internal, then go external, and of course to and fro to ensure that there's no misalignment. Why? For very reason, because imagine this, right? If we overpromise on the external, we have A, B,
Mhm.
C, D, E, F, G, right? This is the expectation. But when the employee or the candidate signs in, right, and joins on the first day, this is the actual reality. This
Mhm.
gap, right, becomes that frustration. Basically, reality, the expectation minus the reality gives you that frustration, basically. And very often, company over promises because they don't know what's happening inside. They go
Mhm.
straight outside to say, I want to sell you this, I want to sell you that, because this is what's going to get me the so-called the best candidate, the best talent. And hence the frustration happens. Yeah.
So George has been really like, in touch because George is a consultant. Okay. So,
Hmm.
and George has been a proponent of HR marketing. Okay.
Hmm.
So George, do you find any similarities with your Philippine clients?
Actually, I would 100% agree with Sam on this one. The approach for branding right now, especially during this pandemic, is actually how you would see a crisis. It means the transformation. Sure, there are bells and whistles. No, you can
Mm,
brand yourself. We can come up with ads. We can come up with ways to attract people, but things won't change because these are all external. And because of what happened, people see through that. I
Hmm.
think what Sam is also saying is it should be an inside out approach, meaning it has to happen with your leaders, with your organization first. And these are probably a couple of things that I have on top of mind. Being able to communicate early and clearly is number
Hmm.
one. Being able to become transparent, be able to show empathy, and be at the end of the day also be able to gain trust from the organization as your place for leadership and everyone else to be more trustful on each other, because I think that's the first step. No, if you can be able, and a lot, and here's the thing, it's funny because there are so many. One of the reasons why most of the organizations out there have closed shop is because most of them have actually operated on a non-transparent model. And when this thing happened, they couldn't they couldn't cope up. No, because when I mean by non-transparent, people are are usually always after goals. They were neglecting people, left and right. It's all about the money. I mean, business is all about money,
Mm.
but there has to be some conscious effort to always put your people first so that you'd be able to transform from within, and then you can start the branding, and then you can start the bells and whistles, and then you can actually see real transformation happen. And that will show because people will advocate. The stages of branding is actually the best part is advocacy. When people start
Mm.
advocating your own brand because, hey, I really, there's this organization who always put their people first. At the end of the day, after this pandemic, people will say, I'm so glad I stayed in this organization. And that's the best proof. That's the best social proof to put out in your marketing because you have testimonies that resonates and that's going to be easily digestible by anyone. So yes, I would agree, Chris, with Sam. Definitely.
If I may add, right, to what George just mentioned, I think one thing that I'm really passionate about is really the concept of having, like what George mentioned, I call it brand ambassadors, basically, in what our local terms we call it, right? Basically, brand ambassadors doesn't only have to be your employees. So I think that's the first layer when you talk about employees who, stand out, who really believe in your brand. They go out, basically telling people how great the company is, how fortunate they feel, without you even pushing them to do anything. I think that's the great part about it. But one thing that HR tend to miss out is that advocates may be outside the organization as well. For example, people who left your organization, right? So
Mhm.
you want to do a proper exit interview where people
Mhm.
leave. I would say leave as an advocate, not leave as a disgruntled staff, right? So imagine now, right? I mean, I left the corporate world for about 3.5 years. I could say a lot of bad things about my previous companies with all the social media awareness that I have, the platforms that I'm speaking on. But why am I speaking good things about them generally? Is because I had a great experience generally, right? So all these touch points are things that employers need to think about. And beyond that, people like, for example, your partners, for instance, headhunters, right? Recruiters always work headhunters itself. They are not just there to sell your roles. We always say that they're not there just to hire the people and sell your roles, but in fact, they are the ones to sell your story. They should be selling your story, in fact. And that's where employer branding grows, right?
Mhm.
Imagine this. They may not be the one bringing the candidate directly in, but if you have, let's say, 10 recruiting partners, everyone is helping tell a story outside. How powerful can that be? It's not just about bringing candidate only, it's seeding the brand outside in the market. That is so, so powerful. So all these are things that I feel are opportunities that haven't been really tapped on yet. But like
Mhm.
George mentioned, starting from inside, the transformation, it has to be authentic, that we say. It has to be solid. And one last point I think I can add on to what George mentioned is that branding, it's a journey. It's a journey. I think we need to recognize that branding is a journey. Unlike what most people think, hey, I need to do a branding exercise. I need to see results in 3 months. So, okay, then maybe that's not a job for me, right? The
Mhm.
KPIs are something always on your mind, but they have to recognize that while you have some quick wins, it's a journey and you need to build it. You need to invest time, energy to build this brand. And that's why it becomes really powerful. Yeah.
Okay. So, Ken, do we have questions from our viewers?
As of now, wala pa. Yeah, none
Okay.
yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So, to our viewers, especially those HRs who have been asking me about, because, like, the reason we did this episode was because, okay, there are many HR professionals now. Okay. Oh, Miss Chris, okay, our company is rebranding. So, as an HR, what can I do? Okay. So, that's their main question. Okay. So, because these are HR people and, they haven't been exposed to the world of marketing. So with regards to recruitment, so the economy is opening up. Okay, so just this afternoon I noticed, okay, I was out and I noticed that except for the face shields and face masks, okay, people are in the streets, okay, and it's like just like a normal day. So how about this? Okay, so there will be like recruitment activities left and right. So how can if I were the company, so we spoke about that, we talk about branding for the company, but if I were the applicant, how can I solidify my personal branding?
George, would you like to take it? Should I go ahead first?
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
please go
Okay, okay.
ahead.
I think from personal branding point of view, right? What's important is then, do you have a compelling and unique story to tell? For the very reason, right? Increasingly, even before the pandemic, we know that if you just submit your CV, it's probably going down the pile or behind a system and no one's going to check it out, right? So obviously, referrals is the best, and knowing someone from HR or the management team itself does help a lot because of the credibility. Hence, increasingly with the social media platform like LinkedIn, for instance, right? If you're able to build a strong personal brand through your story, people will feel like they already know you. They know your value system. They feel like you're credible, and there's a higher chance that they want to have a conversation with you because you're top of mind in some sense. So from personal branding point of view, I think start off by thinking, what is your story and who are you targeting basically? If you're targeting, let's say, the talent acquisition people in, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
the manufacturing field, you need to ask yourself what kind of profile are you looking for? What is the culture they have? What is the ideal candidate that they have? And then think of what resonates with you and what can you showcase that actually checks the box to them in some sense, right? And that's what your personal brand is all about. It's not about being 100% vulnerable. It's not about telling people your sob story that you lost a job. Because I always say this, it's okay to share your story, to be authentic, where people may like your post, people may support you, but at the end of the day, right, will your target audience, whether it's a business owner, whether it's the HR manager, think of you as a candidate, as a talent for what you're sharing? Probably not. They just probably sympathize with you, right? Because you lost your job and stuff.
Yes,
But
yes.
right, but if you're able to not only share that vulnerable side, but also share lessons, share your value. I think most importantly is the value part of it. It attracts them because they know that, hey, through this story, I learned that Sam or Chris, you guys have very good expertise that we need in our organization. You have a great value system that's aligned to our culture. And that's where it makes you a very, very attractive candidate, basically.
Okay, George. Okay, this is a question. Okay, so I'm sure you had your fill of interviews with candidates. Okay, so what's a good question to ask a candidate right now?
Right now, I think the one of the better questions to ask a candidate is, well, aside from obviously sharing your experience and what you did, how were you able to do this in terms of your past experience. One thing I'd probably ask is, how do you see yourself in terms of the way you will contribute to the organization? Yeah, I would usually ask that question just because I wanted to find out two things. Number
Mhm.
one, has he done his research in
Yes.
terms of the organization that he will be joining with? Number two, has he done his research in terms of the role that he's going to fill in? And obviously, what experience does he bring to the table in order for him to be able to fulfill that role? So I would ask those things. What kind of value could you give to the role if, for example, you would be hired in this organization? So again, it's just one question, but I aim to obviously get three types of answers. So I would ask that. In terms of because it's different. Organizations are different. Every organization has their own norms, has their own way of doing things. I think the objective of a recruiter is to look for a fit, shall we say,
Yeah.
and that fit could either be cultural, it could be motivated by performance, it could be motivated by contribution. So again, I might be able to ask a question on or two on fit in terms of the way things are, in terms of the way they're working. So, um, for example, an organization who is very process oriented, I'd probably ask them, how they'd be able to give me an example of the way they troubleshoot, let's say, a problem
Mm-hmm.
area that needs to be step by step, how they actually did that and how they'd be able to do that in the new role, something like that. So again, it's depending on the dynamics of the role, but I would look at those two questions. It's
Yes.
I don't know if it's related to branding, but somehow it is because you're looking for fit. So
yeah, the candidate can explain how he will offer or provide the solution for the organization. But I'm more interested with freelancers because this is a dynamic industry. Okay, so Ken, if you were the one looking for somebody to fill a role in your team, okay, because I know that you do some freelancing work or your wife does, what's
Mm.
a good question to ask them?
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, it's with me it's always a bumpy ride. I get to have fun and just enjoy whatever the fuck I'm doing. So always if I get to talk to people that would be interested in actually joining my team, it's always, do you know me? Of course. Did you do a background check already about what I do? Of course, I would love to get to work with someone that has or is aligned with my values, right? Because we all of us we've worked with a lot of people through the years, and there has been experiences, of course, for all of us that we've worked with people that are not aligned with our goals, with our values, and at the end of the day, we just had to let go of them, right? So one that's it wasn't a joke. That's really the thing that I would ask. Are you ready? Or
Are
will
you
you be
ready to work
ready?
with me? Okay.
Yeah, because there's a reason for why people apply. I mean, there are lots of reasons, as we've done a lot of interviews already on those questions. But it's mostly about money, about like drive. But if I were to really look for someone that would really work with my ideals, it would be not about the money.
Mm-hmm.
It should be about what they want to develop within themselves. Because if I'm gonna pick someone to be part of my team, of course I'm looking for not just a short term like partnership or like employee employment. I would be looking for someone that I could trust, that I could I could also guide and mentor at the same time. So yeah, mainly that's it. Yeah.
So here, I'm just curious and asking Sam. Okay, so
Mm,
right now we will be getting a lot of multi-skilled people and then people who have like different career paths. Okay,
yeah.
so what can you say about non-linear career paths?
I think it's increasingly common, I must say, because for a couple of reasons, right? I mean, this pandemic kind of accelerated the trend where, companies are getting leaner and leaner. We do see that because of cost perspective and for a reason that they expect, with a smaller head count to do more. I think increasingly there's expectation, right? Whether it's within your function itself, within HR, for instance, or doing cross-functional work in that sense, to stay relevant, to stay employable in that sense. So from the non-linear perspective, I would think it's getting more common, whether you are a full-time employee, whether you're a freelancer, entrepreneur, increasingly, right, based on research, based on, a lot of reports out there that you see, it's no longer a specialist market. It's becoming a generalist market, actually, where it's not just about skills to pick up, but also a mindset. Whether or not your mindset is that I need to become an expert and I can only do something. And in the past, you always say, oh, I have 20 years experience in this field. In the past, it works, right? Where a young
Mm-hmm.
person like me that I look younger, a consultant without gray hair, you don't work out well because you don't have enough experience under your belt. But in today's day and age, because of how things have changed, people who have so-called breadth, who have the T-shaped professional kind of aspect with more skills, they become more marketable because they can do multiple things at one pay scale or one cost, basically,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then when things happen, they're able to move across the board and stuff, and they can adapt really, really quickly as compared to someone who has maybe 20 years experience, but 20 years of a specific area experience that may or may not still be transferable at this moment. So hence, to me, that linear part is getting more important. And
Mm-hmm.
face like it or not, we need to think of how can we become a generalist with at least another field and a skill set. Like for example, HR and marketing, for instance, right? As compared to just purely maybe com and band, purely just recruitment, all this will no longer work, at least not for long. That's how I see it. Yeah.
Yes, because like I noticed like recruitment professionals when they ask the question, they ask you, how many years did you spend doing this?
Yeah.
And then how many years did you do this, etc. So it's like a straight line. Okay, so they have to understand that people gain skills when they when they do a lot of when they challenge themselves and then they perform other tasks. So
Chris,
Joe, yes,
let me just add on to what Sam said, because I really like what he said in terms of this time being the time of the generalists. Um, Again, because of the shift that's happening, the gig economy out there, and then companies becoming smaller and trying to acquire each other, there will be so many cross-functional skills that's available out there that that's vacant. And what I mean by this, like right now, it's funny because 10 years ago, when people were looking for recruiters, they would just say, hey, I need somebody who does good staffing, or for that matter, somebody who does compensation and benefits. But now, when you look at the skills right now, the way the role is being done, you'd see like somebody looking for a comp and ben person, but also has some experience, or for that matter, can contribute in a role in OD, in change management. No? And for that matter, there's also that component of marketing, because
yes,
as a compensation, and if you're going total rewards or compensation and benefits, when you do your salary structure, you should be able to have that savvy to understand your market.
Mm.
I
yes,
mean, those are the skills right now that are evolving. And I always agree with what Sam is saying, because these things, some of us may have overlooked it, but I guess now is the time to start acquiring these other skills. Meaning, if you're doing uh, just HR, I suggest you start doing accounting. I
yes.
mean, for some reason or the other, if
It's
you're into
related.
HR, if you're doing HR right now, start learning accounting. Why? Because most of the accounting processes, very very much, going into the bottom line and all, can actually help you with your HR practice to be more influential in your role. You can actually get more traction in decision making, unlike before. If your bosses ask you, hey, what's the take of HR? Yeah, I look at it this way because this is just what HR they do. But now, because you're into accounting, you're into finance, you can give them a better picture. So it's easier for them to decide. So again, all these other skills come into play. Very, very important to start learning them.
If I
Well,
can add to
yes,
what George said, right, just a quick one. I think it's a very important point that, what he said isn't something that, is only relevant in the current pandemic situation. I mean, in fact, before pandemic, right, HR people should already have knowledge of accounting, of, marketing, and the business itself. We always say that. The only reason why HR people are not equipped with that is because they're kind of protected and there's no immediate push, right? In the past, even without that accounting knowledge and marketing knowledge, I can still survive. I still have my job because,
mm,
that's the basic expectation. I just need to do my HR job. But now, because of the situation where, headcount is getting smaller, expectations getting wider in a sense, they're forced to do a lot more in the same role. And hence, like what George mentioned, there's an increasing need for them to know more where they're supposed to already know it beforehand previously. So I think that's change I've seen, which is actually not a bad thing. It forces you to kind of upskill faster because things will just continuously change a lot faster given the technology advancement that we have. In the past, probably one change cycle is like 30 years, maybe, for example. Now it could be every 3 to 5 years, given how technology is changing fast, and we never know, another crisis, touch wood, but you never know what may come along the way. So hence, having that kind of preparation and thinking ahead, and this is to me a very important or good wake-up call. Of course, we don't want to see all the deaths and things like that, but a good wake-up call for us to realize that, hey, since we are so blessed to be still alive and still healthy, we need to think of ahead. How can we be more relevant? How can we stay ahead of the curve because of this opportunity? In fact, I think.
speaking of being ahead of the curve, okay, so if I'm actually past 40, I'm 46 years old, okay. So how can a
Really,
fourth? Yes, okay. I just act, like I'm very young, and I,
I thought you're much
no.
younger than 46.
Uh, well, thank you. Okay. So if I were like a 40-something professional, okay, so
Mm-hmm.
how can I be competitive?
For me, I think age. It's just a number. In a way, I see that way, right? What's important is what value can you bring on the table. Let me just
Mm.
explain a little bit. For a young talent, maybe in the 20s or early 30s, I think what value that individual can bring on the table is probably like fresh ideas, the energy, right? And a fresh perspective that perhaps organization requires to refresh in such times. For someone in the mid-career, like the 40s or maybe even early 50s, for example, they come with certain set of skills. They come with certain experience that, of course, part of it I expect will be relevant in a sense, and that stability. I think that stability is something that the younger generation are still building up to some extent. I always say that the so-called the mid-career generation or the older generation, what I observe is that they have more focus, they have more stability as compared to
Mm.
people my generation or younger, where we tend to be a bit more impatient. We want to do more. We have that so-called hunger, which makes us a little bit less patient in that sense. So I think the different values that people across different age group, different phase of life can bring is a matter of how do you tell your story in a unique manner to bring across that value. How do you find that fit between what the organization needs, like what George mentioned just now, versus what you can offer to give them that match. I think that's the thing beyond the age group itself.
Well, I think both age groups, okay, young ones and then the 40 somethings, okay, they have a lot to learn from each other. Okay, so
Actually.
how about George? Okay, so, okay, HR people who want to upskill. So, what's a good training program for them to invest?
You know what, Chris? If I were to uh, look into the landscape of HR people wanting to upskill, there's no particular recommended training program.
Yeah.
There's none. But what I would ask them is, what is relevant to your work right now, or how do you see your job in the next 2 to 3 years, and then from there try to extract what might be relevant things that you need to learn along the way. So, for example, again, recruitment, the I mean, prescriptively, uh, because you're doing recruiting, then naturally you have to understand or study digital marketing, right?
Mm.
If you're into comp and ben, perhaps the same, and also accounting. But again, it's different case to case. But I would look at it that way. But you know what? I'm really curious because from your question a while ago to Sam, in reference to a 40-year-old pivoting,
Mm.
I think the best question to ask this is to answer is Ken. The
Okay.
reason behind is because Ken has actually is part of a very big group
Okay.
uh, in the digital marketing space, the freelancing groups, and also the mindset groups. He would have a good insight on how these 40 years old people, such as ourselves, can make that shift.
Yes,
So
because this
Ken,
one, Ken,
maybe Ken, can you give us a
I'll just
little bit
give
of
you a
your
background, Ken. Okay, so
insight?
okay, as early as like 2 weeks ago, okay, my colleagues, okay,
Mm,
they've been emailing me or chatting me up because these are people who have like belong to a certain salary level and a certain age group, and they
mhm,
cannot, if they when they answer ads on Facebook. Okay, so immediately that they become disheartened because the first question that they get is, how much was your last salary?
mhm,
Okay, and because they are on a six-figure income,
mhm,
okay, pesos. So, okay, so the recruiter at the other end of the message of the chat, okay, will just say, oh, you're too expensive for me. So how can they go around that? Okay, that question. Okay, how can they actually sell themselves to that recruiter?
there are actually two things.
Mhm,
Again, positioning is always key,
mhm,
right? And in regards to the positioning, let's look at what are the options that the applicant has, right? Because probably the position that he's applying for right now is something that he just saw or he or
mhm,
she just saw. That's why it won't be a perfect fit because he or she has the value of that six-figure income already, and he or she is now applying for something lower,
mhm,
right? That's a difference. There's also a difference in when you maintain the mindset that you're above that six figure already and find something that would relate or that would connect with that six-figure income also. Again, there's time for you to actually find that, right? If you like, I'm not saying you're lowering yourself. I also understand that there are like certain situations like what we have right now, that we have just to, it's already there. I can apply it. I think I'm a good fit for this one. I'll apply. But again, here's the problem that you're saying. When you apply, the HR would say, na, I can't, we can't, we can't pay that amount. So you're left with a choice. And the choice is, but I'm willing to get paid lower than that amount. So that's your choice now. It's a hard decision to actually lower down your value set, right? You've been working for like how many years, and you're already getting paid six digits, and then you go lower. I two clients already asked me about this one, and it broke them. In a couple of years, it broke them because they feel after like the 6 months, after like 3 to 6 months working with that amount, they feel that they really deserve better,
Mm-hmm.
right? You get my point, right?
Yes.
So probably my advice for people going through that stage. I mean, I'm 37. I'm nearing 42. So it's something that I see, with my friends, with my close relatives. The thing that they could do is actually go to LinkedIn. I
Mm-hmm.
agree with both Sam and George. Find the specific skill set that would actually be useful in the coming years. Always get this mindset. What's next? I always ask this question. What's next? Years back, there was a question. What would be next with money? And it was Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Up till now, a lot of people are not still jumping into Bitcoin when they should have, started actually understanding it, right? Accounting is something in the coming years. Influencer marketing is still there. I mean, TikTok is like people are earning right now with TikTok. People are still earning through YouTube. Now the question is, why haven't you started your YouTube channel? There are questions like that. I mean, there are like I saw a Mobile Legends streamer like ML ni Tatay. Yeah, right. He was like 50 plus and playing Mobile Legends, streaming, and there were like 2,000 people watching him. People are adapting to change. Now it's your choice if you adapt to it or just embrace that you won't change. But there are people that, make that decision. I will change. I will make this step. I will make this decision to actually adjust and adapt to this reality that we have now, because everything will just change. So yeah.
Yeah, change. Okay, evolve or languish. Okay, okay. So Sam, what's your take on this? Okay, for 40 somethings. Okay, so how can they remain marketable or employable?
I think beyond what George mentioned and what Ken mentioned, I'll probably add on one more element to it, which is building meaningful connections. We always talk about networking. Most people might think, oh, I go for an event, I exchange name cards, I have one name cards, that's about it, right? Actually, to me, why I say connections rather than network, because we can have 10,000 followers or so-called network on our LinkedIn, for example, right? But a very simple litmus test is this. If I were to pick up my mobile phone now, how many people can I reach out to immediately that will reply me straight away or within an hour, for example? That's the litmus test that we'll consider in terms of who are your real connections that can be there for you when you need it. Why do I say that? Because people in their 40s typically I assume they have a bit more connections than those who are a bit younger relatively. And in such times where jobs are scarce, where it's difficult to find jobs that you want to find are typically those that are hidden jobs, or perhaps they can create some roles possibly behind the scenes. And it only happens if you know the right people who can probably guide you, to refer you, or endorse you. I think personal branding, one part of it is then who are you associated with? Who's willing to vouch for you, to endorse you, to say, hey, I trust Sam, I trust George, I trust Ken or Chris, for example. Because filling which people who don't know you, based on just what I see on social media or just your CV, it doesn't stand out. But if you have, let's say, the head of Samsung, the head of Jollibee, whatever it is, right, to vouch for you, for example, that's a different thing altogether. And that
Yeah.
comes with you investing time in building connections. So if you ask how can you go about building connections, it's not about just going to events like I mentioned. It's really about giving first. I always say, how can you give before you take? Taking part in local hijab communities, in community work, whatever it is, by giving, sharing content, sharing knowledge, being a mentor, for example. These are ways to add value. These are ways to give. These are ways to build your personal brand in a very powerful manner. And over time, without expecting anything in return, you will, I can definitely assure you, right, unlock a lot of opportunities and attract a lot of opportunity, which is what kind of happened to me in some sense, where at the beginning, I wasn't expecting much, right? Just giving back, just helping a lot of people. And because of that, I had a lot of business opportunities came to me just like that. For the fact that people know who I was, what I stood for, and people vouching for me, even though I was like a young consultant 3 years ago,
Mhm.
basically. Yeah.
Very nice. Okay. So that's why everyone is active in the communities right now. Okay.
Mm,
Not also like not for business, but also like to also give back.
yeah.
So yes. So anyway, okay. So for all Asians here, okay. So will English, okay, because I have a lot of clients also, yeah, OFWs, okay. So English is important to them. So how about English as the lingua franca. So, is it worthwhile to, better your English communication skills? Or what other languages can they study?
I think for me, English is important for the very fact it's a relatively or basically an international language, right? And we talk about current situation where businesses is not only limited to your home country because of digital marketing, because of social media. English, I think, is a foundation that we need to have, at least a basic level. The second part in terms of what other languages, I think it really depends on what market you're looking for specifically, right? So for example, I have a lot of business in the Indonesian market. So understanding basic Bahasa Indonesia helps a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, at least from a greetings point of view, from an introduction point of view, it does help to build a real relationship, right? So I think first and foremost, having basic foundation is important because of the international market you're connected with, followed by specific language that is a market they're targeting basically that can help you potentially bridge some gap to make you a bit more likable in that market itself.
Okay, so I think like what resonates with what the three of you are saying is understand your direction. Okay, so
Mm,
you can't just copy someone's direction. You have to understand your own. Okay, so because like other people, they want to be led. Okay, but this is a
mm.
time that they should be managing and then directing themselves. Okay, so I think we have a question here. So Ken, we have a question.
Yeah, from Eman. Yeah, he said, "Hello, Ken. I have a question for Sir George. He mentioned earlier that every company has its own norms and culture, and I totally agree with that. But how can we brand and align our company culture to candidates if we aren't sure already what's the culture of the company? Since there are a lot of people resigned and hired during the pandemic. We've been working from home for almost 8 months now, and more than 40% of our people were hired virtually. I am not sure if I put my thoughts well. Yeah, all good, man. All good,
Yeah,
yeah, man. Yeah, all
yeah,
good.
Eman,
Yeah.
thank you for asking that question. I really appreciate the question, and you actually put your thoughts well. Number one is, yeah, you've said a lot of people have come and gone, meaning there's no apparent, shall we say, pervasive culture that you could brand yourself with. I would always default to what works. When I say what's working right now with your business, meaning you've tried to hire people. So exactly when you've hired them, you're trying to find ways on how to establish certain norms, right? So for example, let's say the order of your business right now is to be more agile, no, to be unlike before, wherein everything is process oriented. Now, because you've tried to get people in, new blood, new people in, you've become more agile. Then try to streamline that agility. Try to put that as some value if it's actually contributing to your business. And if it is, then you can use that as a pillar for you to brand because that's an area that you've become successful, so it's an area of success both from a hiring standpoint and also from a contribution standpoint, meaning if it's actually producing results for your business, then it must be good, right? So try to find those things. Again, I can't say exactly how you're going to brand it, but I would probably say fundamentally to just take a look at what's working right now with the environment that you're working on. You know, if agility is doing well, if being responsive, if candor or radical candor or being direct to the point is working well, then use that, you know, because definitely that message will resonate to a certain audience. Again, you can't please anyone. When it comes to branding, there will be people who will enjoy an organization who's loose. There will be people who will enjoy an organization who's also tight. There will be people who will be enjoying an organization who's highly political. It depends. And again, there will be different niches for that. What I suggest is for you to better understand what's working right now, adapt to that, and use that as your starting pillar.
Bench starting pillar. Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Looking at the question, Eman, what you could also look at is, an influential person doing actually the influence inside the
Mm.
company, right? Because again, people look up to people. That's basically it. So if there's a influential person talking and actually uh, setting an example, people will follow. Lalo na if this person is a leader in the institution, right? I get your question because, with a lot of people like staying at home, there's no human interaction in the office, right? Probably, if I'm getting your question correctly, uh, if people like start going back to work, how will they have these values? Because most of them are newly hired, and a lot of people who have become the institution inside the company are already, out of the company. So, what would be the values installed? Again, they're still leaders inside. The leaders will become the role models, will become the examples for this one. So if you want to instill the old brand guidelines or install new brand guidelines, I mean, these leaders who are still there will be the role models for this one. So yeah.
So Sam, what's your take on this?
If I may add on quickly, right? I think one benefit that we have in this social media age is really about the ability to gather a lot of information from different sources, if we know how to get it, right?
Mhm.
So what I like to do a lot is what we call social listening, meaning looking at social media platforms, looking at things like Glassdoor, looking at how employees of the company actually present themselves at different
Mm.
channels, right? All these are actually very good channels, opportunities for you to understand better, a sneak peek basically, if you know how to put it together. How does the organization operate? What kind of people do they hire? What kind of people do they promote? What's the leadership level like? What are they looking for in leaders, for example, right? So, for example, if you're realizing that the leaders in the companies are always having very corporate-like content outside in the market, as compared to a startup where they're very free and easy. You realize that it's more casual. You can probably have a good sense of what the culture is like, right? In terms of one side is a bit more cautious, one side is let's experiment, and if it fails, we'll pivot and move on from there. So for me, social listening is very big, in particular in current day and age where we have access to so much information. It's just a matter of whether we know where to find it and how we piece the information together to triangulate the information that we need basically. And then of course, from personal branding perspective, is then understanding once again, right, what resonates with you and how can you find a good fit and match? Because ultimately you don't want to kind of misrepresent or misbrand yourself just to get a job because it's not gonna last basically, right? Like I said at the beginning, the expectation versus the reality. So find something that resonates with you, and if it fits, find what fits. There's no 100% in my opinion, at least not all the time, right? So whatever fits, try to see how you align it and then go for it. I think that's the best way to find a job that you can sustain over time and something that is a win-win for both organization and yourself.
So this question is actually common. This question I encountered even before the pandemic. So, we had like a group of people, and then they asked, "Okay, Miss Chris, what's our values?" Okay,
Mm,
okay. So other than And then I would just say, okay, we just want to be responsible. We want to, be able to be more self-directed and able to self-manage ourselves. Okay, because we are not going to copy taglines or slogans from other companies. Okay, so because I think what's when we talk about branding or employer branding, people have this misconception that you have to have this like really really provocative or compelling tagline. Okay, not necessarily. Okay, you just have to be able to define it. So George said, okay, if it's like about candor, being transparent. Okay, so go with it because that's what came naturally. Okay, so just build on that. Okay, and also, okay, I also like what Ken said, okay, this is a time, okay, that leaders have to be more prominent. So the boss have to be more prominent, okay? Like maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, have like a Zoom meeting with the CEO, so that people are get just to have like a sense of what's going on and what the company direction is. Also with what Sam said, okay, so social listening. So right now, nobody told us how to do work from home. Okay, we were just forced to do it because we needed to protect ourselves from the virus, right? So, and then because we're exposed to social media, okay, we get to have like best practices. Okay, not necessarily to copy them, okay, or just follow them like the Bible. Just like be able to have some sense of what the normal things are, and then maybe have a hodgepodge of what works. Okay, and basically have a plan how you're going to survive COVID for the next 2 to 3 years. Okay, so because we don't know when it's going to be over. So there. So how about moving forward? Okay, so I guess in Singapore, okay, so people are expecting that 2021 would be a better year. So how will things move forward? So like for example, for marketing or entrepreneurs, okay. So I guess what will be your message, Sam, for entrepreneurs for 2021?
I think what's important for entrepreneurs at least, right, is really like I mentioned just now briefly, to have the mindset that we need to constantly reinvent ourselves and really be agile in that. Focus on becoming a good generalist instead of just focusing on specialization. Because like I said, whether or not the economy picks up or continues to go down for the next 1 year, half a year itself, we need to be on our toes and recognize that things are going to change really, really quickly, right? Technology advancement, like I mentioned, and how these things going to change, whether a vaccine happens or whether it's going to be mutated or whatever it is, things will change really quickly. And only if we're agile enough, only if we have that competency, that capability that allows us to move around different fields to kind of cross-pollinate our skill sets, will we not only just survive but thrive. But if you're so stubborn that saying that, oh, this has worked in the past, I'm just praying that it goes back to the normal, that I can go back to my regular business and stuff like that, I think the chance of them surviving is pretty low in that sense. So the mindset shift, building a skill set, and really constantly thinking of, like what Ken mentioned, I mentioned at the beginning as well, what's next? Be preemptive. I think that's very important.
Yes, don't be stubborn, okay? So try to read the market, okay? And then, try to adopt. Okay, so how about George? Okay, so how can people move forward for 2021?
You know what? As funny as it may seem, uh, acquire skills, acquire training, learn, become you transition yourself, even if you're like 40 or 50 years old, because again, as Sam said, age is just a number. Try to hang out with younger people. That's my thing. I mean, I'm sorry I had to say it because again, there's so much in corporate before we call this reverse mentoring, wherein you actually get knowledge from the people who are younger, because these guys are actually are actually better than us. Come on, admit it in certain areas. Of course, we can certainly give value in certain aspects, but now with the skills that are coming up, it's important to assimilate and try to understand them and try to get what's valuable right now from the younger set. And never stop learning. Use the advantage right now while most are still on lockdown or at home. If you're not on lockdown, you're at home, start getting these courses. Invest. Because why? once the economy opens, once everything is, once this pandemic is over, probably a year from now, things will just be so good in terms of the economy. And by that time, it's so important that you're already a bit ready to showcase not just the skills but also to add value in certain ways for you to add value. So that's my take. Start upskilling right now. Be like
Yeah,
a sponge.
yeah, take advantage of like this plethora of like trainings, okay, that you
Yeah.
find on social media. Okay, so how about Ken?
Well,
I like it when Ken laughs like that.
surprise. Well, there's a lot of things to do. Again, I'll just add to what George and Sam said. Um, things will change. That's how I always say. It's always up to us to adapt to it. We are meant to adapt. Okay, it's like we didn't know what would happen when pandemic struck, right? But now we're adapting to it, and like now it's like normal again. Technically, weirdly, when you go out, it's like a lot of people are also out there, right? Like there's
Yeah,
no pandemic at all. So
people traffic.
yeah, it's traffic again, but here's the thing: there will always be something for you out there if you choose to. Opportunity, again, it presents itself to those who look for it. If you're not looking for opportunity, you won't see opportunity anywhere. Right?
Yes.
So yeah, so here's the thing. Right now there are lots of like webinars, trainings. Again, they're left and right, free and paid. Your choice. All the skills that you want to look for right now are in fucking YouTube. You just have to go to YouTube and just type it. Honestly. So again, we don't stop learning. Like what George said. Me and George were like talking about yeah, getting also the NLP certification again. I mean, next year. Why? Because people right now have lots of problems. So working with those problems, like being a life coach, being an NLP practitioner, a hypnotist, a hypnotherapist, these are stuff that won't go. I mean, there's a big need right now. Depression and anxiety will always be there right now, it's normal. So this is also a skill. So if you're good with working with people, you have the heart, these are also skills that you could look into. Just saying. Yeah, check it out.
And to add to that, what Ken said, because the reason why, I mean, I'm an HR practitioner, and lo and behold, next year I'm going to attend an NLP certification. The reason behind it is, again, I've said, not just because I want to, I want to learn, but I found out that NLP itself is a technology on language. And that's a very powerful weapon, not really a weapon, an ally that we can use when we're out there doing HR. So even all HR practitioners, I would enjoin everyone. I mean, who's listening right now, try to check it out. It may sound like, hey, hypnosis and all that, but it's not. It's all about languaging. It's all about language and how you can use that to your advantage, and not just to your advantage. Win-win, both your advantage. So that's one of the compelling reasons why I said to myself, "Hey, I'm going to attend this certification as well, just for that."
Actually, I attended Ken's Hypnocom, okay, this year. Okay, so if HR professionals want to learn about, how to communicate, how to be more persuasive, and how to be more, have that influence, okay, they can actually, okay, it will benefit them to have an NLP certificate. Okay, but I was just like, the reason I'm smiling because actually last night, so I messaged Sam at around 1 a.m., etc. But what I was doing there, okay, then, okay, was I was watching on Netflix, okay. Are you familiar with Robert Irvin Restaurant Impossible? So he has this like series of episodes, okay, where he returns to his past, okay, the restaurants that he visited, and helps them, okay, survive, okay, the pandemic, okay. Uh so there were a lot of like entrepreneurs there, okay. So they tell you it's a good series to watch now, because you will learn that if you're an entrepreneur, okay, you will learn how they actually pivot, I mean transform their businesses, okay. So from, like, for example, somebody was in a golf, the restaurant is in a golf course, okay, they just transformed the patio so that he can have an additional, you know a set of clients from the golfers, etc. So they can watch that episode, okay. That's how to pivot, okay. But the good thing about it, my takeaway was, the owner of that restaurant, what he did was, before people started having curbside, uh offering takeaways, etc. He already did it so that it wasn't really that difficult for him to evolve. Okay, so that's what I was thinking, and that's what I was doing while I was messaging Sam. Okay, anyway, okay, so Sam, okay, so any upcoming webinars from Stories of Asia?
We actually have one next Friday, which we haven't publicized. It's really about interesting topic, people, technology, and pandemic. So we're talking about how technology can help better engage people as well as mental well-being point of view. So I'll be sharing more. So do stay tuned for that as well. Yeah.
Yes, that's interesting, because like I agree, because I was in one of your discussions, okay,
Hmm.
and I saw it. I agree with the comment that said like, how come, okay, owners, okay, organizations were not quick to adopt technology or invest in technology during the pandemic. Okay, so there, so that will be an interesting question to tackle in that webinar. Okay, so it was an interesting discussion once again. And Ken, just checking, okay, do we have like new questions?
Wala naman. Wala naman. No new questions as of yet. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, so it was an interesting discussion with Sam and George, okay. And
Thank
then
you.
if like
Yeah.
our Mhm. And then if our audience or our viewers, okay, because what they do, okay, they listen to this and then they think about it and then, absorb things. And after 24 hours, they have follow-up questions. They can just comment, okay, put it in the comment section and we'll be happy to answer those questions. Okay, guys, okay. So thank you for your very insightful comments, okay.
Yeah. Super nice. Have a great night, guys.
Thanks, you
Okay.
guys.
Thank
Hey,
you,
See you.
Sam. Okay, thank
Thanks,
you,
Thanks,
Sam.
Chris.
Thanks,
George.
Thanks, George.
George.
Yes.
Thanks, King
Bye
Ken.
bye.
Thank you.
thanks
Bye
everyone.
bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.